All right. Okay. That would be a separate video, I guess. Me shitting on Piers Morgan about that whole scenario.
Because this was precipitated for those who don't follow you guys as assiduously as I do, and I'm a big fan of both of you. Constantine, you called out Dave on X for accusing the actor Rob Schneider of talking with confidence on topics he doesn't necessarily understand. You said that's exactly what Douglas Murray had accused Dave of doing when they had a spat on Joe Rogan. And you said, on X, I'm not trying to be a dick, but this is exactly what Douglas was saying to you. He was saying you talk about things you don't understand with a level of confidence that is inappropriate, and you pretended he was calling for censorship. You can't have it both.
And again, no one called for censorship. Okay? Douglas Murray did not call for censorship. I don't remember the exact terminology, but I never got censorship out of it. It wasn't like the platform. It wasn't like silence him, whatever. He was asking like, why should I debate you? You don't know anything about the subject, okay? Which, by the way, I think he was wrong. He should have just debated and like just fucking stomp him out based on just like knowledge. The problem is you're not trying to convince the other person. You're trying to convince the audience, and the audience are emotionally captured already about the subject. They already picked a side. There's also like kind of like nobody to talk to on in that regard, right? And yeah, again, you don't know anything about the subject. Nobody's trying to censor you. Simple as that.
Both ways. Okay, you've got Dave sitting here, had accused Dave of doing when they had a spat on Joe Rogan. And you said, on X, I'm not trying to be a dick, but this is exactly what Douglas was saying to you. He was saying you talk about things you don't understand with a level of confidence that is inappropriate.
Yeah, that's the other thing I'm going to say. Dave Sniff has a pretty big audience. I won't say it's like Joe Rogan, but like he's on Joe Rogan a lot talking about this shit, so he does have that audience too. But he has a pretty big audience. He has zero responsibility for the bullshit that he says, right? And all of his arguments are emotional. They're either lies, emotional, or both. Okay? And yeah, he has no idea what he's talking about. He's talking with so much confidence that his viewers think that he's right. Which, by the way, every time I get comments about like Dave Sniff in my thing, which is like not a lot of comments because I don't have a lot of viewers, it's like, Dave Smith owns you. He's so smart. Whatever. You're such an idiot. And it's like, you're entitled to your opinion. That doesn't disprove my point, though. Nobody makes the argument about the arguments I'm making. They're just saying defending Dave Smith for the sake of defending Dave Smith.
You pretended he was calling for censorship. You can't have it both ways. Okay, you've got Dave sitting here. You don't want to be a dick, which I appreciate because I've had a festival of that from George Galloway this week. But let's not get into dick measurement contests. But this whole argument, really, about people who are supposedly ill-equipped to talk about things. Whether it's Dave because he's a comedian by stock in trade, whether it's Rob.
No, it's not because he's a comedian. You can be a comedian and know what you're talking about. It has nothing to do with him being a comedian. Douglas Murray kept calling him a comedian. That's not a good thing to do. But it has nothing to do with him being a comedian. It's just when he talks, you see that if you know anything about the scenario, he does know what he's talking about. All of his arguments are just emotional.
Schneider, whether it's anyone really. Explain where you come from on that.
Well, first of all, you say it's been precipitated by this. I think the disagreements between Dave and I run about as long as the Iran-Israel conflict, so, and probably longer. So we disagree on a lot of stuff. You've invited me on your show many, many times over the last year. I've always said no when talking about this stuff because I don't consider myself an expert on these issues, which is why I've consistently turned it down. The only reason I'm here tonight, by the way, is you said to me, I'm not going on your show until you come back on mine, and I thought that was actually fair enough. So particularly given that you have me here with somebody who's also not an expert, this is essentially two guys in a bar, in a pub, chatting about their opinions. So that's fine. However, I think the reality is that an issue of this complexity and seriousness should not be addressed by a former comedian and a current comedian. I don't really think that's the right approach. But my point to Dave is something else. My point to Dave is whenever he wants to take a shortcut and disagree with someone who's saying something that's different to him, he will resort to exactly the same thing that Douglas said to him, which is you actually don't really know what you're talking about. You don't have the expertise to talk about this. You haven't been to the region. You haven't read enough. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. And that's exactly what Douglas was saying to Dave. Now, you can agree or disagree with whether that's right or wrong, but the fact that Dave is violating his own standards, it seems to me to be pretty hypocritical.
Dave, you're a rank hypocrite.
That's what Piers saying and not me. I did not add the word rank.
Yeah, you would have done
it. True. I'm sorry. There's for the record, I just want to say me and Rob Schneider made up. I've always been a big fan of his. We message back and forth and we're cool. But no, I'm sorry. Obviously, this is ridiculous. And there's no hypocrisy here at all. It is if we were to come to a debate and what I brought to the debate was I just said, shut up. And that was all I did for the debate, was just tell you to shut up. And I had no argument, and I didn't counter any of your arguments, but I just told you to shut up. And you were to say, man, that was a really ridiculous way to debate. And then I pointed out that you had also told someone to shut up once in your life. That wouldn't mean you're guilty of hypocrisy. It's a completely different standard to be dismissive to someone on Twitter than to agree to debate them on the biggest show in the world, show up in front of tens of millions of people, and your argument essentially is just to dismiss them. Your point doesn't matter. So no, and also, clearly, I wasn't telling Rob Schneider.
No, it's still hypocritical. You're still using the same logic. Now, if you don't want to engage with a person, don't engage. But when you tell somebody you don't know what you're talking about, you are essentially doing the same thing that Murray did, just Murray did on a bigger stage. You're doing it on a smaller stage. By the way, if you're doing it on Twitter, it's still a decently big stage because your Twitter is probably bigger than like somebody like me who's a nobody. Okay.
Because he's a comedian, he can't have an opinion on this. I was telling him that I don't really think he knows what he's talking about on this issue. And then
Which is exactly what Douglas said to you.
Yes, but he didn't back it up with anything. That's the point. Listen, no one would have had a problem. The whole point was that Douglas had an opportunity to demonstrate his superior level of expertise and did not. And this is the overwhelming...
Yes, this is the overwhelming problem with that thing. This is why Douglas Murray came off as like just a snob. He never gave an argument. He didn't prove Dave to be stupid, which he should have. That's all it is.
Opinion.
Well, I don't think that's quite true. I think on a lot of the subjects you debated, he actually did give very good reasons why he disagreed. Now,
the problem is he started off like here's the thing. He set the tone because the Douglas Murray was just calling Dave Smith a comedian and yada yada and doesn't know what he's talking about. He set the tone at the beginning. He did like tried to do a character assassination in like the first 30 minutes of the Joe Rogan Experience. The next 2 hours, by the way, majority of people will probably have not watched the next 2 hours. Everybody who clowned on Murray clowned on the first 30 minutes. Nobody even saw the rest of it. So the rest of it doesn't even really matter because no one even cared about it anymore because everyone saw the character assassination. And at this point, if you detect the character assassination on purpose, like, oh, he's purposefully doing this, right? Building a straw man and whatever, attacking it. The rest of your arguments, nobody's even want to care about. Even if they're going to listen, they'll be like, oh, he's just making it up. Oh, he's lying. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's this. Whatever. Oh, he's biased. Oh, he's this, right? So, like, it doesn't matter, right? He shouldn't have done the first 30 minutes the way he did. He should have proven him wrong. Should have proven him wrong, then do the character assassination.
Well, I don't think that's quite true. I think on a lot of the subjects you debated, he actually did give very good reasons why he disagreed. Now, as you remember, I wrote an article at the time talking about that situation. I did concede that I thought Douglas should have lent more into the arguments. The way you and I have always debated has been on that basis, right? And I think that is true. But I don't think this argument about Twitter really works because when you go on our mutual friend Joe Rogan's show, you're in front of millions of people. When you and I are exchanging, or you and Rob are exchanging arguments on X, we're also in front of millions of people. We're also having a debate. Yep. I don't understand what the difference is.
You don't understand the difference between like dismissing someone on Twitter and agreeing to debate them and showing up with
Rob
nothing but
made a series
them?
of arguments on Twitter.
The fallacy is the same. That's the problem. Like the action you took is the same. So that's why there's no difference. No. The magnitude of the action is different, but the difference in its score is the same.
To you in front of those same millions of people that saw you on Joe Rogan, and instead of addressing his arguments with counter arguments, which is the standard that you normally apply and you demand that other people apply to you, you instead basically said, shut up, Rob, you don't know what you're talking about.
Piers.
Just because you read one book doesn't mean you know what you're talking about, which is exactly what a lot of people said to you, and you got very upset about it and pretended they were trying to censor you.
No, okay, there's a couple different things here. Number one, Piers, as I told you, I believe were my first appearance.
Piers, please save me. Come on, you saved me against the lawyer lady. Why aren't you getting involved now, Piers? Come on, I'm the golden child. Help me, Piers.
After the Douglas Murray debate on Joe Rogan. And the first thing I said to you was that I go, look, there's been a lot of people who have been challenged to debates who say, I'm not going to debate that guy. He's beneath me. I've done that with other people. And then there's been people who accept and show up to the debate. I said, Douglas Murray's fatal flaw was that he did both. He accepted and then showed up and said, I'm above you. I shouldn't even be debating you. And it backfired on him. Now, as far as your...
I agree with him on this. He is 100% correct. Yes, that is... Douglas Murray fucked that up. I said it multiple times.
I'm sorry, what was your second point there? I had another response to that. What was the other thing you said, Constantine?
I don't remember the sequence of the points that I made. What do you mean exactly?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna save you both, because I think we've probably dealt with the element about whether you should be debating or talking about these things. You're both here to talk about stuff.
Yeah, honestly, dude, like, if you have a debate, at this point, bring a pen and paper. Especially when people are talking so fast and just go through points so fast, you want to return to a point, you're going to forget others. Start fucking writing.
About 9 to 5. What about the most important bit, the 5 to 9?
Or have like, these guys are rich. They can have a person taking notes on the side.
The most comfortable part of your day, and today's sponsor can help. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheets are temperature regulated. CozyEarth.com. Trump, you believe, has played an absolute blinder in the Middle East. Dave, to put it mildly, does not agree and thinks he should now be impeached for betrayal. So first of all, Constantine, why, in your estimation, has Trump played an absolute blinder?
Just to put this in context, I said this, I think, on Friday. I spent that week when these initial strikes happened in Washington, D.C., and the point that I was making is, I don't think that, certainly none of the people I met in Washington, D.C. with any insider knowledge thought that Benjamin Netanyahu, who'd ordered these strikes without at least a wink and a nod from President Trump. So President Trump is doing something that, from what I remember, he said it between 30 and 40 times on the campaign trail. upheld, which is Iran must not be allowed to get a bomb. And he's achieving that outcome while not taking any of the blame or any of the flag for it. That was the case on Friday. Obviously, the situation has evolved since then, and there's now a much bigger debate. But at that time, he had absolutely played a blinder in allowing Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli military to achieve the military objective, while also sort of claiming that he's not involved and kind of at that time.
If he now gets involved, as the jungle drums seem to be suggesting, that is a massive moment for Donald Trump, I would say. I mean, you could argue that is the most important decision he will have taken as a president, and maybe the most important decision he ever takes if he actually starts bombing.
We'll see, man. He's only been less than a year in office, and there's still Russia to deal with.
With American forces, Iran, that is a massive thing to be doing. Do you think it's, as Tucker Carlson says, something that could imperil his presidency?
We are in the unknown, so nobody knows how this is going to play out. I think we should all be honest about that and be fair. What I think it really fundamentally depends on is what you mean by the word involved. If you mean that America is going to help Israel shoot down ballistic missiles, I don't know that that will be such a major decision or will be seen.
Well, let me paint a picture where they use a B-52 bomber and they drop one of these Buster bombs to try and get to the nuclear sites that the Israelis can't get to because they haven't got that technology. If they were to do that, in other words, directly use American forces to do the bombing, would your calculation about Trump change?
These are all hypotheticals, Piers. The one thing that I do know, and I think Dave will tell you this himself, is that
I don't like he's dodging it. I think you can say that, yeah, that is not exactly what Trump promised, but I can and if you're defending it, just be like, but I understand why he would do it. He wants Iran to not have nukes. It is too big of a risk to everyone involved, to the U.S., to Israel. It is too big of a risk, and I would have to go back, and he would have to go back on his promise of not having wars. Like sometimes wars are not his decision. This is like Iran having a nuke, which by the way, the argument that's like they don't have a nuke, they don't plan to have a nuke, yada yada yada. It's like good luck figuring out what the fuck Iran wants when you're just like a comedian. You're just like somebody who lives in the U.S. and you only know what the media tells you. Realistically, right? Like that's all you know. And by media I mean also X, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, right? You don't know anything realistically. You don't know any internal knowledge ever, right? You can just make assumptions, right? Do they plan on having a nuke or not? Maybe only like 3 people in Iran knew what the plan was. Okay. The thing is that you cannot allow Iran to have a nuke. This is not a problem you can kick down the road to the next president who will not promise to not have wars, to be like the leader of peace. And by the way, Trump said peace through strength. Dropping a bomb and destroying a nuclear facility is peace through strength. You're maybe like in an active war, but as long as you're not boots on the ground, you just fly a plane over. Technically, that's a bit different.
the thing that people in the United States, from talking to people there, are most concerned about is any sort of boots on the ground scenario. They do not want American soldiers in the Middle East. I think they're right not to. I genuinely think that. And so fundamentally, it really depends on what happens and the way that it happens. And you're right, it is a big decision. But I think it's, you know, all this stuff, you know, I mean, Dave's calling for President Trump to be impeached over this, when this is something that he promised.
This is so absurd. Calling him to be impeached and removed over this. At this point, I'm like, are you like a fucking Iranian agent? Like, do you just hate Israel and the US? Like, what's going on? Like, Iran actually not having a nuke is a good thing for the US. By and large, it is a good thing for the US.
American people 30 to 40 times on the campaign.
Well, okay. On that, I would clarify that. He said that number of times that Iran should not be allowed to have a nuclear bomb. That is indisputable. He also has consistently portrayed himself as a man who wants peace, not war. I'm going to solve the problem in Ukraine, solve the Middle East, and so on. This would go against all of his claims to be that person. And
no, not really. There's, first of all, the problem is there's multiple ways to achieve peace. Okay, there's multiple ways to achieve peace. Second of all, the idea of like, I think it is more realistic to understand no boots on the ground than no like any conflicts ever. That is extremely First of all, think about it this way: October 7th, 2023 happens. There is an active war. Okay, Russia Ukraine already happened. There's an active war. Okay. The whole like this happened after the fact, but like India Pakistan, which by the way has nothing to do with the US, right? It's an active war. Okay, when you have so many active conflicts of other nations having boots on the ground, okay, you can't seriously, and which have to do with US allies. India Pakistan, not really, But Ukraine and Israel, not only are they US allies, they're also in very key positions, okay? Middle East and Eastern Europe are key positions for the US in terms of strategy, in terms of deterrent, okay? These are key positions. You want these allied nations to do well, okay? And expecting absolutely no military force to take action in those areas during an active war, I'm sorry, I think you're delusional. If you thought that there would be like no exertion of force aside from like diplomatic talks. You thought like Trump will just go, talk this out, and everything would be okay. And if they said no, we would just be like hands off. I think you're crazy if you thought that. And again, Dave Smith's, you know.
Of course, the big debate behind all this is that Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of national intelligence, the IAEA director last night, they both said in very recent times, including 24 hours ago, in the case of the Atomic Agency, that there is no evidence that they've seen that Iran is anywhere near progressing to an actual nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key point of this.
So I like Tulsi Gabbard. We've had her on Trigonometry. I think she's a great human being, which is why I did her the courtesy of watching the full clip of her testimony that she gave. And what she says in that testimony is that Iran is not pursuing the nuclear weapons program. But what Iran is doing is enriching uranium to 60% and beyond, which is a clear indication of their desire either to actually make nuclear weapons or to move much, much closer to a position to be able to make them. As I think Dave would concede from all the nuclear scientists.
Again, it is not smart. If you were Iran, how would you go about making a nuclear weapon? You would use Western ideologies of we love energy, we want the people to be happy, and you're going to use that and you'd be like, let's create a nuclear facility for energy, right? And the US would be like, oh yeah, go, yeah, for sure. No, we understand. Yeah, just do that. That's cool, man. Yeah, do that. Yeah, it's for the people. And then how much easier it is to go from a nuclear facility for energy to a nuclear weapons program versus going straight into a nuclear weapons program, right? I'm pretty sure Iran would not plan for the next 2 years, they would plan for the next 40 years. And by the way, if your nuclear facility for energy is already up and running and your population is dependent on it, you can't all nilly-willy go and destroy it, because now you're causing massive fucking suffering to the civilians who you don't want anything to do with this. Duh.
What they're saying is you need about 3 to 5% enriched uranium for civilian purposes.
Yeah.
They are now enriching uranium to
5,
60%. And by the way, this
I thought it was like 20. Holy fuck, 3 to 5?
is also in the IAEA report, and no one's talking about this. They're using their 20% uranium to make 60% uranium, which is again an indicator of the fact that they're moving either towards attempting to make nuclear weapons at some point or to be in a position to do so. And that is the threat. And there is no other reason for them to be doing that. So yes, they don't have the exact bomb ready to go, but they're moving in that direction. And Israel is in a position to deal with that threat for the first time in a very long time. And I understand why they're doing it.
Okay, Dave, before we get to your response to that, just explain to people why you have called what Donald Trump is doing a betrayal and why you think he should be impeached.
Well, I think he has brought us into a war with Iran. Now, how much this war escalates, we will see. And I think that this is it is the most profoundly risky and reckless policy he could have pursued, or just about. I think this is very likely going to lead to a catastrophe, much like all of the other terror wars, including the one, Piers, that you heroically led the opposition in the UK to in 2003, of course, referring to the war in Iraq. And as you remember well, Piers, from that war, the justifications just kept constantly changing. And then when one fell away, they'd move to the next one. Oh, he was in on 9/11. Okay, he wasn't in on 9/11, but he's got weapons of mass destruction. Okay, he doesn't have weapons of...
Here's the thing, though, where I think like Dave has a solid point here, where he says like these wars were like a waste of time, money, yada yada yada. What I don't think he understands is, first of all, war on terror is not an easy one war. These people are usually like they're not playing by the rules. Okay, they're not playing by war rules. They're doing whatever the fuck they want in order to win. They mix themselves within societies, within civilians. They can be sleeper agents, yada yada. Like there's so many like problems with the war on terror that it's not an easily won battle. Okay. Secondly, what he views as like, oh, the U.S. lost $2 trillion, boots on the ground, they lost soldiers, yada yada. What he never mentions is the wins. Okay, Islam is on a massive decline. People are they're more racist towards Islam, which again sounds like a bad thing, but because you're more aware of it, you're more like it's more in your head that like suspicious looking people exist. Okay, it's more in your head. Not everything is always very peaceful. Okay, all the movies that came out about like terrorists and stuff like that like increased that idea in people's head. Now it sucks for like an Islam, like a person from the demographic who has nothing to do with it. It sucks for them, yes, but bringing the awareness of the regular person to those people, also by the way, for these people of that demographic, right, might encourage them to oust maybe somebody they know who is acting a bit suspicious. Okay, there are a lot of problems with this, obviously, but there are benefits. Okay, and to say like, let's say they never went to the war with Iraq, they never went to no Gulf War, none of this ever happened. You don't know exactly what the state would be, how, like if you would have more terrorist attacks or less. Like you can say that's like, oh, 9/11 was a retaliation to like the Gulf War, like in the broader picture. You can say that, but you don't know if that would have not still been the case regardless of the Gulf War. Because again, the ideologies of the West and Islam, they do not match. And as soon as they're going to start to interact, this can still happen, right? You can say maybe like accelerated the problem. You could say these things, right? Like it's really hard to say. And we can say, 9/11 happened because we can say that for sure. We don't know the alternative, what would have been.
Of mass destruction, but we have to liberate the people or bring democracy. And I've already seen that. It's remarkable how sped up it is. I've already seen so
Nobody's saying that about Iran, by the way.
Many of the war hawks bouncing back and forth between all of these different justifications. But of course, in the end all of the justifications failed. Not only did he not have weapons of mass destruction, not only was he not in on 9/11, but we also didn't liberate the people. The worst thing that ever happened to the people of Iraq was George W. Bush's war there. And as far as Iran enriching up to 60%, yes, it's true that they only need, I think, between 3 to 5% for civilian nuclear purposes and maybe something like around 20 to 25% for some medical needs. But that is what is known as a latent nuclear deterrent. There is another reason why they would have that. They want to demonstrate that they can get the bomb, but they don't have it right now to stop something like this happening. But the bottom line is that since 2000.
That is a great point to why the US should stop them from doing it. Why the fuck would you want your enemy, who is openly your enemy, who you have to constantly strike deals with, to not be in open conflict against? Why the fuck would you want them to have more like power in a negotiation? That like, oh my, he's so. I literally do not think he can think a step forward. He just says stuff as he sees it, and he doesn't even think about it.
2007, our CIA has said they don't have nuclear weapons and they're not striving to achieve them. Tulsi Gabbard, not only in her testimony, but in the Director of National Intelligence as her capacity serving that role, in the annual threat assessment just put out a couple months ago, reaffirmed the same thing. And so is the global community. Iran has been willing to negotiate this entire time. And maybe the negotiations haven't been successful, but even Benjamin Netanyahu, in his interview with Brett Baer the other day, couldn't even manage to lie and say that they've broken out and they're pursuing. He said maybe a year. The same thing he's been saying since I was 7 years old, lying over and over and over again because he wants a regime.
Okay, what does this have to do with Trump? What Benjamin Netanyahu wants is a regime change in Iran for the future and prosperity of Israel. That has nothing to do with what the US should do. Benjamin Netanyahu's job and his obligation is to his people, not to the US. And if he can somehow convince the US to take action, he's doing it for the benefit of Israel. That is his fucking job. Okay, it is up to the US to decide if they want to participate in this or not. Why are we talking about Benjamin Netanyahu in this? This has nothing to do with anything.
regime change war here. And he's said this in his own words, and so have all of the neoconservatives. Look, right here on your show, Piers, which I think might be the most fascinating moment in the history of Uncensored, when General Wesley Clark reaffirmed that not only had he seen the plans to overthrow 7 countries in 5 years, but that it went all the way back to the early 90s, and that it was revived, in his words, in a study paid for by the Israelis. They've gotten the 6 other ones. This is the 7th one. This war is not about nukes that Iran doesn't have. And just one more point I would make, as the great Scott Horton said the other day. Look, I mean, even if they were developing nukes, which they're not, Truman knew that the Soviets were developing nukes. He didn't launch an aggressive war against them for it. And Johnson knew that Mao Zedong was developing nukes. He still didn't.
Say that again?
That Iran doesn't have. And just one more point I would make, as the great Scott Horton said the other day. Look, I mean, even if they were developing nukes, which they're not, Truman knew that the Soviets were developing nukes. He didn't launch an aggressive war.
He couldn't. How the fuck are you gonna launch a war against the Soviets at that fucking time? Are you fucking for real, bro? If he could, he would. If Truman could stop the Soviets from making a nuke, he would. He could not. What, you think the Cold War happened because they just were measuring dicks? There's a reason they didn't attack one another. They couldn't. The risk was too great to attack. If the US attacked the Soviets when they were trying to build their nuke, okay, that would be a fucking catastrophe for the US. Are you fucking kidding me? Dude, this guy has like no fucking brains.
Against them for it. And Johnson knew that Mao Zedong was developing nukes. He still didn't launch an aggressive war against the country. And the point is that you could sit here and say, just like they did with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, you could sit here and say, no, we're just going to have a no-fly zone. We won't have boots on the ground. We won't have this. Look, Iran has already demonstrated, in a few days that this war has been going on, that they're more capable than all of the other countries we picked on in the terror wars. They've already hit Israel and killed people there. What's going to happen when a few...
And yet, somehow, their leaders are in bunkers. They have absolutely no air defense. Israel is refueling in, like, right under their noses, in front of their eyes. Right? Like, one in front of their eyes, one under their nose. Like, one over here and one, like, over here. Like, that's where they're refueling. No. Like, Iran is really not capable of pretty much anything. Unless, again, they have, like... Because, again, he keeps saying... the Iranian guy, the leader, keeps saying that it's like, you don't know what's coming. So far. Right? Yeah, you had some maneuvering fucking rockets that hit some targets, and you have some casualties, very minimal damage. Like, yeah, there were like 9 people died, whatever. Like, yeah, like he did damage. Like, I'm not saying he didn't, but like, in terms of like hampering or like disabling some Israeli capacity to destroy Iran, 0 damage.
Few Americans get killed. Hopefully this doesn't. But what's going to happen if that happens? What do you think Donald Trump's going to do?
Many of us carry around bulky, worn-out wallets that are uncomfortable and full of junk. The big question is why. Ridge wallets can hold 12 cards plus cash with 0 bulk. They're made from premium materials like aluminum. Offers a code Piers, P-I-R them. Constantine, your response to that?
Well, it's fascinating. So
I think that is an amazingly big question. Constantine, your response to that?
Well, it's fascinating. So the Iranians are willing to negotiate, but the negotiations aren't going anywhere. That's a very strange way of looking at it. Look, there's so much to address there. First of all, you've got to think about this and understand.
Let me translate it for like a Dave Sniff enjoyer. Okay? When a country says we want to negotiate, but they keep delaying the negotiations, it means they don't want to negotiate. It means that they can still hold on without negotiating. Maybe if they can hold on for 4 years, they might negotiate with a weaker leader, somebody who will be less demanding of them. Okay? We want to negotiate, but not coming to the negotiation table is not we want to negotiate. Is we'll talk to you when it's more beneficial for us to talk to you. Okay? US is not in the position of weakness here. If the US, the stronger power here, is telling you we want to negotiate, you as the weaker one need to be like, let's fucking do it. We need to do it. Okay? You cannot be the one at a weaker negotiation position and delay the guy with the stronger position. Okay? You're never gonna get anywhere.
And this from an Israeli perspective in the situation. A lot of people think that Israel has just launched a war in Iran. That's not how Israel sees it at all. Israel has been at war with Iran since October the 7th, when an Iranian proxy,
way before, but yeah.
Hamas attacked them. On October the 8th, an Iranian proxy, Hezbollah, began to fire rockets into Israel. Then the Houthis.
By the way, Dave Sniff doesn't believe that Hamas is an Iranian proxy, doesn't believe that Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy.
another Iranian proxy began to attack shipping and also Israel, right? Now, what has happened since then is Israel has eliminated those threats to, I was going to say deballed, but decapitated Hezbollah. They dealt with the threat of Hamas, and they are now in a position to deal with the threat they've always been concerned about. Now, why is Israel so concerned about this? Well, first of all, Iran has been saying for a very long time, they don't want regime change in Israel. They want the state of Israel not to exist. Now, think about the fact that in the post-October 7 world, they cannot take the risk that they're only enriching uranium to 60% because they want to threaten to have nuclear weapons. That is not something they can do. And by the way, Piers, there's something that people don't seem to understand about. You know, we struggle in the West. I really do think we all struggle in the West to understand the fundamentalist mindset. And let me give you an example of what the regime in Iran is like so that we can all understand what the threat here is. After the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran in 79, the war broke out between Iran and Iraq. And in that war, Iran was at a disadvantage. It was militarily backward. It wasn't financially able to deal with that. And you know what they did? They attempted to mitigate that by recruiting as many child soldiers as they could. We don't know how many because they didn't bother to count, but it's hundreds of thousands. And because some of them were too young and too weak to fight, they didn't send them to the front line. They sent them to sweep minefields with their own bodies. That is what this regime does. Now, if those people are willing to do that to their own children, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, what do you think they would do to the children of their enemies if they get a nuclear weapon or if they get close to it, or if they're allowed to continue funding proxies around the Middle East in order to attack Israel as they've already done?
Dave Smith.
Okay, can I respond to some of this, Piers? Because as I always insist when I come on your show, ironically, I get called a moral relativist when I criticize Israel, but I'm the one who's always asking for an objective standard here that we can judge all sides on. Because it's just, yeah, you can just focus on the horrible things that Iran did in the 1980 war with Iraq, which Saddam Hussein...
Nobody's focusing on that. He's explaining to you who you're dealing with. What type of person you're dealing with. A type of person that will stoop to any level to achieve their goal.
Launched, and the U.S. backed Saddam Hussein as he was using chemical weapons. And
so that justifies using children to walk into minefields?
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Okay,
let
so
me finish my point here. Instead of just strawmanning, well, I was about to say, so let me finish it. Okay, by the way, Israel never killed any children, as you know, Piers.
I didn't see the strawman. Yeah.
Right? They have the most.
Israel is not sending its own children into minefields. It's a massive difference.
Okay, Constantine, let me finish my point, and then you can respond to it and see if you can take it on. Now, when you sit here and say that they've been at war with Iran since October 7th because Hamas is their proxies, what exactly? You know, proxy means that I would think you have operational control over them or something like that.
Well, actually, let me explain what I think that means, because I've been arguing that point in terms of understanding where Israel comes from on this, which is there can be no doubt. I don't think, Dave, you would cast doubt on this, that Iran has financially and militarily given active and sustained support for a number of years to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, and to Hamas. I mean, you wouldn't dispute that.
Right. So, Piers, then by your logic and Constantine's logic, is Israel our proxy? They just attacked Iran.
Well, I would say that Israel is actually, you could well argue, given the amount of support that America...
Everyone considers Israel a U.S. proxy. Another reason why Iran wants to destroy Israel is because it is a U.S. proxy. Russia considers Ukraine a NATO/U.S. proxy. That's how it works, yes.
Gives Israel militarily and economically. Yes, I think.
Fine.
Look, one person's ally is another person's proxy.
Can I make some points on this?
Hold on. Let me just...
Yeah, but so I think ally proxy.
Can I flesh out your... Dave, I'm very happy to hear counter-argument. Can I just flesh out Piers' point a little bit, if that's okay? So here's what we know. According to the State Department's own figures, Iran gives Hamas about $100 million a year. Latest figures. They've been funding Hamas since the early 1990s. Yahya Sinwar said in 2017 that Iran is the single biggest military and financial backer of Hamas's military wing. In September 2023, a month before October the 7th, 500 Hamas fighters and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters were being trained by the Islamic Revolutionary...
By the way, not an expert. Knows way more than this non-expert.
Abroad. I can't remember if it's in Lebanon or in Iran proper. And there are numerous chronicled, documented meetings between senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Hamas and Hezbollah fighters in the lead up to it. What do you think they were doing? Talking about world peace and swapping hummus recipes? This is something that they've been involved in very heavily, and they continue to be involved in. And Hamas and Hezbollah are the sword hanging over Israel's neck that Iran has used in order to prevent the very thing that's happening now.
And again, and something to point out here, when we say Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis are Iranian proxies, I don't really care about the Houthis, it's the former two. Are Iranian proxies, it is not the same, like it's not equal as Israel and US. Israel being a US proxy, even though Israel technically, for all intents and purposes, is a proxy of the US in many fucking cases. Israel makes its own decisions. Israel is running its own military. US has very little control to what Israel does. If it did, Israel would not probably attack Iran. Okay? If the US had full control, like Iran has over Hamas and Hezbollah, not even full, but like majority control, then it would be the same. But it's not. Okay, so even like you can't even like even though technically they're both proxies, the magnitude of the proxy is extremely different, but they are proxies. 100%.
Okay, so to be clear here, it's an outrage that Iran has sold weapons and given money to Hamas, and therefore
No, they can like no, that's not the problem. But let's put it into a different way. If the US, let's say you had Mexico attacking the US, okay? And the US knew that China was supplying Mexico, okay? Would the US then attack China? Probably not. However, like because just like military might, they probably cannot attack. They cannot resolve that issue. They can barter, they can try and make deals, diplomacy. They can do that, but they cannot attack China. Okay, it's too big of a force. It has too much strength. They can attack Mexico. Okay, the thing is, Iran has nobody right now. Russia is fucking occupied. Iran is at a weak state, and Israel does have the force to attack Iran. If Iran was supplying Mexico, guns, all that stuff, right? The US would 100% attack Iran. Okay? 100%. Because it can. The difference here, not are they right to do it or not. The difference is, can they and can they not? If you can, and you know this is the source of your problem, you attack. And you get rid of the source. If you can't get rid of the source, you quarantine the symptoms. You get rid of as much symptoms as you can.
Hamas is their proxy. Yet, as we all know, Piers, and me and you have discussed this, 2 weeks before October 7th, Benjamin Netanyahu sends the head of Mossad to Qatar to make sure that the funding to Hamas continues. Yet, is Hamas now a proxy of Israel? Is Israel at war with itself?
Well, I think on that point, I certainly think that Benjamin Netanyahu, when this is all over, is going to have a monumental day of reckoning. Not just in the corruption courts, but I think he's going to have a monumental day of reckoning about how he allowed this to happen on his watch, how Mossad so spectacularly dropped the ball.
Yeah,
no one can give me an explanation for why they can carry out this kind of attack on Hezbollah with the pages.
I 100% with Piers here. Once everything is done, I don't think he's going to jail. Let's be real, but he will probably have to resign in disgrace. Like realistically speaking, yeah. Even though what I think he's doing is securing the future of Israel in that region and giving it the most peace it would have in the near and long term future for without waiting out Iran's regime change and all that stuff. I think what he's doing is speeding up the process for a prosperous Israel. However, because of how he's doing it, yeah, that's how it is.
Carry out so precise an attack in Iran, but didn't apparently know that Hamas was spending 20 years building a tunnel system and didn't know 3,000 of them were about to pour over the border. I will never defend Netanyahu in this. I think he's going to be a busted flush. I suspect he sees this attack on Iran as being a chance to avoid being a busted flush for a little longer than it might have been the case. But there's going to be a day of reckoning for him. And the fact that he actively encouraged billions of dollars to be funneled to Hamas to create a divide and rule strategy between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority has also turned out to be one of the most catastrophically wrong things that an Israeli leader could possibly have done. So, look, that's where I sit with Netanyahu.
None of this makes Hamas an Israel proxy, right?
Okay, fine. Well, yeah, I mean, it is kind of by the definition.
They're not the primary source of their funding and support.
No, that's not. That's not how proxies work. They're not controlling them. Just because they gave them money, like just because you give somebody money doesn't mean they're your proxy, okay? It has to be like some support, like more than just money, okay? You have to have some control over them.
Okay, fine. Okay, it's got to be primary, just being, okay, fine, whatever. Anyway, the point is this, right? Obviously, right now, Israel has taken out much of the Hezbollah leadership. The Houthis have been bombed. I think there's still a bit of a problem for them. They've been absolutely leveling Gaza. And so they think this is the moment, and of course, Bashar al-Assad fell as well. So now they think this is the moment for regime change in Iran. It's the same reason why people like Ben Shapiro were celebrating when Bashar al-Assad fell. Now the Shiite Crescent is no longer supplying weapons from Iran to Hezbollah. But I'm not an Israeli. I'm an American. I'm not cheering when the emir of Al-Qaeda takes over in Syria. And listen, whatever you put the risk at here, which if this thing keeps escalating, the risk of this going to a real ground war, another war in the war on terrorism, let me be very clear when I say this. I don't know that America will survive this. We went into the terror wars in a much stronger place than we're going into this one. And
I don't know if he knows this, but wars unite the country. Like, wars unite the country. The aftermath of a war, not so much. The war itself usually unites a country. So far, you know, this might be different because of all the information that is available, and also like with the way this war would happen, probably not. But for the most part, wars unite a country. Like when you have a common enemy, you know. But the U.S. would need to take some damage, basically, not necessarily like the extent of 9/11, but let's view it in like as a, you know, a scientific experiment, right? If let's say you have an enemy that wants you dead in Iraq, right? We're gonna use the 9/11 scenario without going into the whole like they lied and all stuff. Let's say it was true, right? Let's say you have an enemy of the US in Iraq that wants your destruction, and you need to eliminate it as soon as possible before it becomes bigger. How would you justify going after them? Because right now they're not a threat. Like, should you as a country wait for them to be a threat, or neutralize it before it is a threat? If you're choosing neutralize, how do you go about it? And in my opinion, the fastest, easiest to explain, you know, in a sense, cheapest, not cheapest, but like, the one that would garner you the most support would be if this entity that you are claiming is your enemy, or you know is your enemy, right? If in order to get support to attack them, is get that entity to attack you, or fake them doing so. That is by far the easiest, fastest, most politically supported way to get the result of we need to destroy them. We can't justify to the people without alerting the enemy. How do we go about this? We need to let them attack us or fabricate them attacking us. 100%. And then everyone would unite. The problem is, in this scenario, you won't be able to do that. Okay, you will not be able to get Iran to attack the US. You won't be able to fabricate it right away. Conspiracies all over the place. Iran is in no position to attack the US. Nothing. There's like practically no way for you to justify it. However, if I could think of one way, I would say fake a last hurrah by Iran, which would be a missile hitting a densely populated area. Preferably would be California, but just very unlikely because of it makes no sense location-wise, right? They would probably aim to hit Texas or Florida or New York. Again, these are like the best targets to hit just from the position, right? You're not going to shoot all the way across the world. You're going to shoot the shortest distance. Because it would have less time to be intercepted, right? So you can fake a last hurrah by Iran shooting at the US. That would maybe be it, right? But good luck faking it enough for people to believe it. You know, like that is the, yeah.
And this is a much tougher opponent than Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi. We didn't go into the terror wars $37 trillion in debt.
I don't think this is a tougher opponent than Iraq, to be honest. I think Iraq was a much tougher opponent. Iran, from my understanding of the surroundings, first of all, no support from the people. The people themselves revolted, like, you know, not successfully, but they tried. Okay. You have a government in place-ish that already would be willing to take over. Okay. And I do not think Iran has as many insider terror. Like, it's not... The field of battle is different compared to Iraq. Okay. At least, like, it looks like me. Like, from my very limited knowledge. The field of battle is very different.
We didn't go into the terror wars.
It's like Iran focused all of its offensives either on, like, you know, rockets, whatever, on units of people that are working outside of Iran. The amount of units of people, the amount of like what do you call it, warriors in Iran, in my opinion, is likely a lot less compared to what Iraq had. Definitely percentage-wise.
With the cultural and political and racial divides, we have mass protests in the streets right now over Donald Trump trying to enforce his immigration policy. This is going to be, this has the potential to be an utter disaster. And why should any American or British person, for that matter, why should any of us support this war? Because Israel thinks it's in their interest. Israel has attacked.
Well, I would argue. Okay.
You don't have to support the war, though. Like that, I don't think that's even the argument. Like, you're okay to not support the war.
I would argue it's not just in Israel's interest. I think Iran is an evil regime that oppresses its people, that has funded terrorism.
So it's in Iran's interest, it's in Syria's interest, it's in Lebanon's interest, but it's not based on this shallow understanding of this battle. It's not in US's best interest, even though Iran being having a regime change and becoming an ally of the US rather than an ally of Russia. You know, like that would be like the goal, right? I think that is like a massive benefit to the US.
Saddam Hussein.
Well, yeah, I agree. But in Saddam Hussein's case, I never believed.
Saddam Hussein never funded terrorism.
Well, I never believed that Saddam Hussein had WMD. I think the difference
there was no terrorism in Iraq until we got rid of Saddam, actually.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up in 40 at levels they've never seen. Acting now, one.com.
No. I'm sorry. Just to be clear, I said that before I heard Piers Morgan make that point. I was saying about being a brutally oppressive, dictator.
I think you can't hold any truck for this Iranian regime. I think a lot of Iranian people would agree with that. I think they would love to get rid of them. I think that Israel has every right to feel threatened by Iran's tentacles in the way they supported 3 different terror groups right on their border. So I'm not saying that you're not right, that this might all backfire.
Let me just ask you.
I'm not saying it may not backfire. I'm just saying I do understand why Israel has decided to do it now. I think they sense that Iran's regime has never been weaker because of what's happened in Syria, because of what happened to Hezbollah. You know, what's been the most significant moment of the last week? Probably Hezbollah saying we're not getting involved in this, right? So, that to me was a very significant moment. And that may well have emboldened not just Israel to continue pummeling Iran, but also may have emboldened Trump to think, well, actually, if we're ever going to deal with this regime, now is the moment. Now, that's not to say, Dave, that you're not right.
Yeah, take advantage of the situation. Now, and that being said, yeah, US doesn't have to get involved. But if you're Israel, you would want the US to get involved. Why? Fucking more firepower. Like, fuck yeah, bro. Like, what are you talking about? From Israel's perspective, thinking about Israel's prosperity and future, bro, hell yeah, come party. Are you kidding me? Join in. Then I don't have to use as many resources. It's in US's best interest to wait it out. Maybe give the finishing blow, you know, like, finish him. But let Israel drain itself of all resources, therefore becoming an even stronger ally and a stronger dependent of the US.
That this could all backfire horrendously. And if America gets sucked into a ground war, then it will be a complete nightmare. I've got no doubt about that.
Yes, but would you concede, though, that if you allow Iran to enrich uranium, that also could backfire?
Yes, right? I was about to say that. And also I was about to say that Russia is now making pretty worrying noises that if America gets involved, it's not going to tolerate it. So you can't ignore that, given what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, but again, yeah, the US needs to think about US. US first. Okay, America first. You have to take the pros and cons. Why is Russia saying that it's like, oh, if America gets involved, we're not going to take it lightly? Because if the US gets involved, they want a regime change in favor of the US, not in favor of Russia, right? This is like, I wouldn't say this is a strong ally of Russia, but it is a good funneling ally of Russia, right? Also, having Iran in bed with Russia can keep the US not at bay, but more distracted, because every time and like, again, dividing it, like, again, people like Dave Smith, who are, you know, pretty much anti-Israel at this point, right? Like, this public pressure to be anti-Israel in the US right now, that works in Russia's benefit, like, straight up, and Iran's benefit, right? This is a massive problem internally for the US, right? This is a big problem for Israel in terms of its war capabilities against its neighbors that are like constantly attacking it. Yeah, this is like a very good destabilization strategy from Russia. Russia would want, and again, Russia would just use Iran. Russia doesn't really care about Iran for anything, right? But it will use it to cause this mayhem in the US, of course. And if the US solves this problem, gets rid of the Iran problem, Russia has less cards to play with to to be an annoyance or like a shit disturber for the U.S.
Great. But yeah, I think in your point, Constantine, yes, I when I saw the IAE report, I read it and I thought they've gone from 3% to 60% uranium enrichment. And there's only one reason you would do that. Either you take Dave's view, which is they're doing that because they want to have a form of nuclear deterrent without actually having a bomb. Or if you're Israel, you're like, these people have been funding terrorism against us for decades. And now they've gone from 3% to 60%, way more than is needed for any civilian use. Clearly, they are on a fast track here to be a nuclear power. And we cannot allow that to happen. So I do, well, let Constantine respond first. But I do, that's why I do understand why Israel feels the way it does.
Well, exactly. And let's be honest about something here, Piers. The three of us are sitting in comfortable air-conditioned studios on the other side of the world from the region where this is happening. We have the luxury to pontificate about the real reason that Iran is enriching uranium to near weapons grade. Israel does not have the ability to get this wrong and then go, well, I apologize, I got this one wrong, as Dave has done with President Trump. He supported him being elected, and now he's going, I got it wrong, guys, let's impeach him. Israel, if it gets this wrong, gets annihilated. They do not have the luxury of that. Now, Dave, I think the point you make about the American people, I have the greatest respect for the American people, and they should determine the course of America themselves. They've elected Donald
100%.
Trump, and that is the reality. No one here, Piers found out, I think, with some history, that Americans don't like being told what to do by foreigners, and I'm certainly not going to do that.
The liberal is showing, it's like, oh, I don't agree with you. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, he's my president. Like, he doesn't get to decide. He's like, I get to decide because I voted for him. Like, if I don't like what he's doing, then like, fuck him. He's out of office. Yeah, that's not really how it works.
It's up to the American people. I know the American people don't want boots on the ground, and neither do I. And neither do sensible people, I think. I think the extent of Americans' involvement should be to help Israel defend itself against the missile attacks.
I don't think there should be boots on the ground in Iran from the US. I don't think it's that, like, I don't think the US needs to get that much involved to have boots on the ground. The only time the US would need to have boots on the ground, and by need I mean, would be to, like, this is the last thing that needs to be done to finish this, and then we win, and like, there is a regime change. Just like a participation trophy. That's the only reason I can see that the US would have boots on the ground. Like a 1 week fucking journey into Iran and go back with no casualties, barely any shots fired, if any. Okay? Like, that is the involvement of boots on the ground by the US that I'm expecting. Bombing from airplanes, I think it's very different.
Get the job done themselves. I agree with you. This is Israel's war. They should prosecute it to the best of their ability, and they should deal with the threat that they face from Iran. I don't want a massive involvement of the West. I don't think that's what we need. And by the way, Piers, just one quick point, slightly tangential, but not necessarily important. For those people who care about what's happening in Ukraine, this is brilliant for Ukraine because Iran has been one of the biggest
100%.
suppliers of drones, the suicide drones that have been raining down in Ukrainian cities and killing civilians and military personnel there. The fact that Iran and Russia are now having to deal with the situation takes a lot of pressure off Ukraine, and it's good for that reason as well.
All right, Dave, the one thing I would quibble with about what you said earlier was about the way that Iran has responded. They always threaten annihilation when they get attacked, right? Or when they're involved in any kind of skirmish. We've heard it towards the end of last year and nothing really happened. We've heard it again now. And although, yes, they've got through the Iron Dome several times, they've killed some civilians in Tel Aviv. This is indisputable. So they technically have done better in terms of their revenge attack than other countries have fared against Israel. I accept that. But I also think we are far removed from seeing any kind of huge resistance coming out of Iran. In fact, what you're seeing is their bluff potentially getting called here, that a lot of it has been rhetoric built on sand, literally, and that they don't actually have the military capability to even tackle a country 1/10 its size in terms of population, let alone if the United States was to get involved. So I think what you're seeing is actually the opposite of the way you characterized it. I don't think you're seeing a massive response from Iran. I think you're seeing as good as they can do, and it's not very much.
Well, look, I mean, this is what remains to be seen, and we don't know. But in 2007, when Dick Cheney was trying to push George W. Bush into war with Iran, it was the Pentagon who stopped George W. Bush from doing it. And it was them who said that we do not.
Very different situation, though. Okay? 2007 Iran is very different to 2025 Iran. Okay? Very fucking different. We like, a lot less intel, a lot less knowing of what the fuck is going on there. Iran had more support. Russia was not at an active war in Ukraine, having being distracted by that shit, okay? Very different scenario. Even comparing them is ridiculous, but okay.
Not have escalation dominance over Iran, essentially meaning that we have, we still have thousands of troops in Iraq right now. We have bases and embassies all throughout the region that they can touch. Now, we'll see, I guess, Piers. I guess we're going to play this game. I guess we're going to play this incredibly risky game.
I agree, it's high risk.
For no reason.
Again, I've been over this fucking.
Essentially from the United States of America's interest. And, look, this stuff, I'm sorry, I just find this to be too ridiculous. All of the intelligence is saying that they don't have nuclear weapons and they're not pursuing nuclear weapons. There is one country.
So what's the 60, like, all of them are saying they don't have nuclear weapons and don't have plans to produce nuclear weapons. However, the 60%, the 60% uranium, whatever, that seems like it can only lead to nuclear weapons. fuck?
One government in the Middle East that is not a member of the non-proliferation treaties, that has nuclear weapons secretly, and it ain't Iran, it's Israel. It is so ridiculous.
Well, I agree, it's absurd. As you know,
clearly not that big of a secret if you know about it. Like, clearly not a big secret then.
I agree. I agree. I don't understand how Israel is allowed to continue pretending they don't have nuclear weapons.
What are you saying? Are you saying Iran should develop nuclear weapons to compensate for that reality? Or
no. What I'm saying is this, okay? Whenever you guys talk about this, even already, and Piers, I got to say, I thought you were a little bit guilty of this right after October 7th, understandably perhaps so. But even right now, whenever it's all about the Israeli perspective, as if we're all Israelis. Oh, Israel can't take the risk that they have 60% enrichment. Israel can't get this wrong the way I could change my mind.
Because, well, again, I get his point. He's right. However, the reason we think this way is because we still view Israel, rightfully so, as not, I wouldn't say the victim, but like the ones who are being attacked. Israel doesn't go out of its way to attack and destroy populations. Israel is not the one saying we need to kill every Iranian, we need to get rid of Iran completely, wipe them off the face of the earth and kill all the civilians. Okay? Israel's not the one saying kill all the Arabs, okay? That's the side that is attacking Israel. That's what they're saying. That's why we view it from Israel's perspective, because we consider Israel to be technically still on the defense, even though they're annihilating their offenders, okay?
My mind about supporting Donald Trump. I guess Israel can get it wrong when they lure America into a war, when they pump out propaganda saying that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. That's okay.
That's America's problem. America wasn't smart enough to know if they're lured into a war. That's America's intelligence problem. To get better intelligence, I'm sorry.
When they get that one wrong, but they can't get this one wrong. Okay, fine.
Why are you blaming Israel for that? It was your own government lying to us about that. I was protesting against the war in Iraq exactly the same way you and Piers.
I think we all oppose it.
But it was our government's lying to us. It wasn't about Israel. Why is everything that happens in the world the fault of Israel Day?
This is such a blatant straw man. I didn't say everything in the world is the fault of Israel. I'm saying
you're blaming Iraq.
We're also guilty of this.
But why are you putting the emphasis on them when George W. Bush and Tony Blair were using their bully pulpits to make this point to a far wider audience than some guy in the Middle East called Benjamin Netanyahu?
If you think that I am removing any of the blame from George W. Bush or Tony Blair, I assure you you're wrong and you don't know what you're
It really sounds like it. It really fucking sounds like it. It's like, well, again, it sounds like it because he's emphasizing that. Maybe he thinks it's on 10%, but if you emphasize the 10%, the 10% starts to sound like 90%.
Talking about. I've been blasting them for years. They're war criminals who should be in the Hague.
I agree.
That is not the issue. We are talking specifically about the nation of Israel right now, so I'm talking about their responsibility. And why is it, by the way, that this is always a one-way street? You know, I hear all the hawks constantly being like, Iran said this, Iran threatened this. What about the threats in the other direction? Maybe Iran feels like they don't have a choice. So look, Muammar Gaddafi...
Because Iran is not our ally. We have no responsibility to defend Iran. We had nothing with Iran. We have like sometimes, the US sometimes has to deal with them to make sure they don't get stronger. That doesn't mean that they're your allies. So thinking about, well, let's view it from their perspective and why they think that they are the victims. It's like, how does that benefit you?
Iran is on the list of 7 countries that are supposed to be overthrown. The U.S. government went and overthrew both of their next-door neighbors, invaded the countries and destroyed them after putting Iran on the axis of evil list when they had nothing to do with 9/11. And then when Muammar Gaddafi denuclearized, they went in there and overthrew him in the most violent, brutal way, was sodomized to death by a pack of madmen. Maybe Iran also feels that they can't get this one wrong. Why are we doing this? This is a country that poses no threat to the United States of America. And
yet, why would you want a country that could be a potential threat, more likely to be a potential threat, to grow in power? I just don't understand this logic. Do you just hate your own people? Like, is that what it is? Do you just hate your own people? Do you really think the world believes in live and let live? Have you opened a history book at any point? Have you seen conquerors? What do you think would happen? Okay, let's say we leave Iran alone, okay? Let's say they don't have any intention of fucking destroying Israel, right? But they're definitely not our allies. They're allies with our enemies, okay? And we are like, well, we don't have any beef with Iran. Let's let them grow in power. So the forces of our enemies, Russia essentially, grow stronger. Okay. A ruler comes along in 100, 200, 300 years, right? And he starts to exponentially just focus on taking strides in developing their offensive capabilities. But you're like, well, it has nothing to do with us, right? We leave them alone, they're going to leave us alone. And then at some point they're like, yeah, fuck America. Just fuck them. We don't like them. Fuck them. Right? They let us grow. Now we're gonna fuck them. Why would you want to be in that situation as the like? If you are US, if you are in the lead, if you are leading, this is not about sportsmanship, okay? This is not sports. This is human lives we're talking about here, okay? This is like future of your own country, prosperity of your country. If you're the US and you're in the lead, why the fuck would you want any other country, even if it's like your ally, to get too close to your power level? Even your allies need to be like second strongest armies, like the second strongest force, but still, like, if we just, if you think about levels of magnitude, like 10 levels of magnitude under you. That's how much you want the gap to be. Okay? Your enemies weaker than your allies, and your allies 10 times weaker than you. In an ideal scenario. And you're trying to reach that ideal. That is your goal. Otherwise, you will get fucked at some point. If you're not maintaining the lead, you will get fucked. Iran was in the lead at some point. They're getting fucked.
And if you guys want to try to hang on the fence here and go, hey, I'm not telling Americans what to do. I think Israel should do it on their own. But that's just a fantasy land. They're not doing it on their own. They're doing it with our weapons, with our intelligence support.
That they traded for, so it's technically theirs. Yeah. Your intelligence support? Really? Then, okay, so never share intelligence with your allies from now on. What? This fucking stupid logic. He just doesn't believe in alliances. He just doesn't believe in countries having alliances at all, ever.
With our money, with us protecting them from a retaliation strike, and, at least possibly, with our president using negotiations to dupe Iran into thinking that they weren't at risk. I mean, that's what Benjamin Netanyahu says, and that's what some other reporting says. Maybe that's not the case, but either way, he pretended like he was afterward. So no, none of this is being done without America. This is about a regime change war. All of them said it in their own words. They're on record. Do you guys think Benjamin Netanyahu has been mistaken for 30 years, claiming that Iran is a year to 3 years away from a nuke? Or was he lying?
Well, I think, listen, I think the reality is...
It doesn't matter if he's lying. Realistically speaking, does it matter if Benjamin Netanyahu lied? Realistically speaking?
The thing that struck me was going from 3% to 60% suggests an intent. It suggests an incontrovertible...
But they're not the only country that does this.
But nobody disputes that Iran...
It's not the only country that does this. This is the only country that does this, that the US can stop from doing it, and that is openly against the US and is allied to the enemies of the US. That is the only country that does this.
Iran has gone from 3% to 60% in uranium enrichment, right? So that is all, unlike with Saddam and the WMD that didn't exist, that is indisputable. It's just how you interpret what they're intending to do with that. Now, let me ask you...
Can I just, one quick thing on this? So first of all those regime wars you're talking about are the fault of the US and other Western governments who pursued them.
I find it really interesting how much Piers Morgan is letting him speak, even when he's like, can I just add it? He's like, yeah, and he just shuts up. And look at this one versus the one with the female lawyer. Holy
responsible.
Man.
That's who should be to blame, and as you say, should be prosecuted for that. But the reason people rightly call you a moral relativist, Dave, is that you don't seem to understand the difference between, yes, I think it's quite clear that Benjamin Netanyahu wants regime change in Iran, but that is not the same as the regime in Iran wanting to destroy Israel. There's a big difference. If the mullahs in Iran wanted a different prime minister of Israel, that is not the same as wanting to destroy their entire country. And the reason Israel is as paranoid about these things as it is, let's be honest, it's surrounded, or at least was until recently when opinion in many Arab countries changed towards Israel, thanks to President Trump's Abraham Accords. Israel was surrounded by many, many countries who don't believe that it has a right to exist. And that's the difference. And that's why people call you a moral relativist.
Well, okay, that's totally ridiculous and makes no sense at all. And it only works. I'm about to...
Please.
Answer, Konstantin. Let me finish. Because it only makes sense when you only say, I ascribe the worst of intentions to this regime and the best of intentions to this. What was overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi? Was that simply replacing the leader, or was that destroying the country, turning it into a failed state?
You've brought in a different conflict. Let's stick to Israel and Iran.
No.
The Israelis say we want regime change. The Iranians say we want to wipe you off the map. That's pretty different.
Hold on. So I'm the moral relativist.
Yes.
But then when I point out what one side actually did, you run away from it and say, oh, no, we can't talk about that.
It's your government that destroyed Libya. It's not Israel. It's your government.
Know anything about this? Israel was lobbying for us to do this for years.
Who made the decision to do that?
our government, and I
Yes,
hold them
exactly.
criminally
So
responsible.
blame them.
Yes, Konstantin, why are you an Israeli? Why are you constantly
No,
running cover for them?
because I
am
believe in
blaming
speaking
my
the
gov-
truth and being honest instead of
No, you're
dragging
not
in stuff
speaking
that is
truth, dude.
irrelevant.
I think this is the own moment. Oh my god, Dave, you so fucking lost this. Oh my god, bro. Yes, it's called accountability. The US decided to bomb Libya, okay? Even if Israel was like, yo, can you bomb it? Yo, can you? Like, US doesn't have to agree. They're the ones who did it, though.
No. It's not irrelevant at all. What are you talking about? Yes, my government is criminally responsible for the
Great,
war
then
that
deal
they
with that.
launched. And the Israeli government is also responsible for constantly trying to lure my government into more wars. That's what I'm standing up against right now.
So the American government is so gullible that they just go around invading countries on the say-so of Israel.
Again, what a straw man, dude. Benjamin Netanyahu came
No, but that's literally your fucking argument. That is literally what you're fucking arguing. Holy fuck, that is literally what you're arguing.
to America in 2002 and testified before Congress that the U.S. should overthrow Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, and the Iranian regime. This isn't a secret. He's advocating that we fight more wars. And I'm telling you that this war, which we do not need to fight,
which he is allowed to do. If you don't like that they do it, then stop being their ally. If you think being an ally to Israel is a problem to the US, stop being their fucking ally. Okay? Everything is up to the US to decide. Okay? Are we gonna bomb Libya? Are we gonna do a regime change? Like, well, Israel is telling us to do so. We might as well. It's like, well, no, wait, hold up. Israel is not the fucking one in charge here. We're in charge. We're the stronger force. We tell Israel what the fuck, right? Not Israel telling us, yeah, we don't want to do this, okay? And then Israel pushes us like, Israel, you're crossing a fucking line here. Don't fucking test us. And Israel will shut the fuck up. You know why? Because you are the fucking United States of America. And if you don't think that you're the fucking United States of America, then shut the fuck up. You're a fucking idiot.
not in our interest, has the potential to be devastating to our country, let alone the region. What is the moral relativism in any of that?
I explained to you what the moral relativism
is.
One side wants to wipe the other one from the map. The other side wants not to have people who want to do that in charge of that country. That's the difference.
Pierce, do you not get my? Let me just see, Pierce. Do you get my point here? This is what they said from the very beginning of the war in Gaza. Israel doesn't want to wipe Gaza off the map. Israel just wants to retrieve the hostages and get it. But they are wiping it off the map. So why do you just get to have this standard where you decide what they want to do? I can't base it on their track record. We can't look at Iraq. We can't look at Libya. We can't look at Afghanistan. Evidently, as all the hawks can see, we can look at World War II. Everything is just like World War II. But it's
We can look at Libya, not Israel's doing. We can look at Afghanistan, not Israel's doing. We look at Iraq, not Israel's doing. But Gaza is Israel's doing, so like we're gonna attribute our actions to what Israel is doing.
It's not like the last 25 years. As you know, I've been countries off the map left and right.
Well, as you know, I've
done
been
their track record.
Yeah, as you know, I've been increasingly critical of the Israel strategy in Gaza. It makes no sense until you hear people like Smodrich talking brazenly and openly about ethnic cleansing. I mean, it doesn't make any pretense. And at that point, I do think that there are certainly people on that in that government at senior level who absolutely want to get all the Palestinians out of Gaza, out of the West Bank. And if that has been their plan all along from October the 8th, then I was duped, and people that feared that were correct.
Which, by the way, even if that is the plan, that is still more humane than just saying we want to kill every Jew in Israel and every Israeli in Israel. Okay? That is still better. Saying, like, we want to remove you guys from this land, not kill you, just remove you. Like, fucking give you, go somewhere else. Okay? That is still more humane than just saying, it's like, we're just gonna, like, fucking line you up and kill you. Okay? Like, that is technically, okay?
To see how that plays itself out. I hope that is not going to actually be the case, and that people who say on the Israeli side, they say to me, well, you know, Smodrich isn't the government. Well,
I really doubt that's going to be the case. There's too many people in Israel who are against removing the people from Gaza, the Gazan people from Gaza. Honestly, I think it's just going to be helping them rebuild and bringing in re-education, like re-educating them, teaching them shit that is important to them. Less fucking zealotry, you know, teaching them history, yada yada, actual history, not fucking fabricated like Israel is like just the devil, whatever.
He's a pretty senior member of that government, and he's not even hiding what he thinks should be happening. Before we finish this, guys, I want to talk about the politics here for Trump as well, because it's really interesting to me. Konstantin, you've got the conservative right in America absolutely split down the middle. You've got Tucker Carlson on one side, a lot of people who agree with him that this could be a disaster for America, for Trump. They shouldn't be doing it. Obviously, Dave and Tucker Carlson, now unusual bedfellows on this, but there's always a first time for everything. But you also have a lot of people on the conservative right, Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, others who are absolutely gung-ho to get stuck into Iran here. Is there a danger that politically this really does fragment Trump's base? base support. And what does that mean for the Republicans, for MAGA, for Trump, for the future, for J.D. Vance and people who are aligned with Trump maybe at the next election and so on?
Well, I should preface this by saying I'm an outside observer in the United States. I do go there a lot. I spend a lot of time there. I speak to people there, but I certainly wouldn't claim to be, the greatest expert in the world about what's happening in America. My sense, unexpert sense of this is that actually I think your presentation of it is a very online-focused presentation. I think if you look at the polling, the vast majority of people in America are basically in the position I described earlier, which is they don't want Iran to get anywhere near or continue to get closer to developing nuclear weapons, and they don't want American boots on the ground. And that's the dilemma that Donald Trump has to navigate. And if you can do that...
Well, there's a third dilemma. So this is where it gets more complicated, because I don't think he's even thinking about boots on the ground, but I do think he is thinking probably as we speak about whether he allows an American B-52 to take a 30,000-pound bomb and drop it on the nuclear sites which Israel hasn't got the ability to get to.
Yeah.
I think that is probably
so
more likely than not right now.
So let's be honest,
what he may order.
if that happens and
Which,
it's successful...
by the way, I am saying more than likely he's purposefully showing that he's planning on doing it to rush the negotiation. And the negotiations is, complete surrender. Are you pro-Trump? I'm pro whatever is good for everyone. I think what Trump is doing right now is better for the US than if there was somebody else. I'm not against Trump, let's say it like that.
And it doesn't lead to an escalation, everyone's going to love it because Americans love to win and they love to bomb shit, right? Let's be honest, that's the history of the last 20 years. And if that happens, they'll be very happy. And if it goes in a different direction, they will be very unhappy. So you're right, it's a big call. I don't think anyone sitting here, or frankly anywhere, knows how it's actually going to play out, or whether it's a good idea.
That what he's doing right now is the best course of action, or that I think that he's likely faking the bombing. What he's doing is the best course of action. I think if Iran changes to an ally of the US over the ally of Russia, it is a massive benefit to the US. And it will bring a lot of more alliances in the Middle East region to be in favor of the US over Russia. And it's more pressure against Russia overall. Russia is the adversary for the US. There's only one adversary for the US, and it's Russia. And the more cards the US has to have against Russia, the less leverage Russia would have against the US. I just joined. You want Trump to invade Iran? I don't want to invade. I don't want boots on the ground. I don't think the US needs any boots on the ground. However, I think the best play possible for the US is to come in towards the end, deal the finishing blow, or somehow have the attribution of a regime change in Iran attributed to the US somehow. Either way, Iran switching sides to be an ally of the US rather than the ally of Russia is the best way to go about it. Right? That's the best result. Sorry. What needs to happen is up to debate. I don't think US needs boots on the ground. That is bad for US politics, and it just looks like you're just pummeling the weak guy at this point, right? At most, it might give the killing blow in a sense. That would be it, right? So I think what Trump is doing right now of I want you to negotiate, but your only negotiating power here is complete surrender. I think that is probably the best way to go about it from Trump's perspective right now. And threatening them, not actually doing it, but showing videos of the bomber in training. You don't just a practice run, not doing anything, right? Having that fear in their minds, be like, dude, they're gonna fucking bomb the shit out of us. Okay, we need to make a fucking deal. I think that's the smart play. Him actually bombing, I don't even think he needs to actually do anything realistically. I don't know. It doesn't look like Iran has any cards left to play.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting here advocating for that necessarily. I think Israel seems to be doing enough damage to significantly degrade any attempts Iran is making to have a nuclear enrichment.
If there's a regime change that is in favor of the US, that's how. Current regime will not leave Russia. There's no way current regime leaves Russia. Many Iranians, as far from my understanding, 70% are against the current regime, are also in support. A lot of them are in support of Israel, and a lot of them are in support of the US. I don't know the percentages, though. So if there is a regime change with minimal civilian casualties, I think that goes in favor of like switching sides, switching Iran to away from Russia. And Russia right now is threatening the US. Then what has Trump actually done? I don't get it. Right now, he's telling them to surrender. Like he's putting diplomatic pressure on them. And also, let's be real. Israel attacking Iran, even though no one makes this statement officially, everyone kind of knows that this is sanctioned by the US. That the US is like, yeah, go ahead and do it. Everyone treats Israel like a direct proxy of the US. Anything that Israel achieves is going to be technically in favor of the US. US doesn't even have to do anything. It's in favor of the US. That's how it works with the Israel and US alliance, for the most part. We saw the Ted Cruz interview. Do you like what Israel did? Regarding what? Israel did a lot of things. Bombing Iran, I think it was necessary. It would be better if Israel didn't have to bomb Iran. I think it was overall the right choice by Israel. Israel can, like, look, at the end of the day, Israel cannot, for its own safety and prosperity, cannot let Iran maintain the same regime. That is why for the last 30 plus years, Benjamin Netanyahu said we need to usurp, we need to change the regime in Iran. Iran is actively against Israel. For Israel's benefit, it is better if Iran is not against Israel. Like that's just, like, it is what it is, right? From Israel's point of view, bombing Iran at this time was a brilliant move. I don't know if I like it or dislike it. I think if I look at it from a point of view of Israel, I think it's a good thing. I didn't jump from my seat when I heard about it. I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. That was pretty much it. It's like, oh, Israel bombed Iran, about time, kind of thing. Like, it was bound to happen since October 7th happened, and it's like the war is not going away. If Israel has a chance, it's going to attack Iran. I think that was like inevitable, right? If you don't have Iran, you don't have problem in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, and in Yemen. What would you say about the argument that Israel bombing Iran strengthens the regime because it unites the Iranian people in a common cause? It could backfire. 100%. It could backfire. I think it's a risk that Israel... Look, here's the thing. If the commoners, but the Iranian people don't like the regime. Yeah, they don't like the regime. But let's assume, right? What is the risk reward, right? Like, let's just do simple math. If the common people of Iran support the regime that is currently failing, that Israel is destroying, how much worse does it get for Israel, realistically? Not really. Like, it doesn't really matter to Israel if the Iranian people support the regime or not, right? If they can keep Iran at bay, then this doesn't matter. However, if they're bombing them and the Iranian regime doesn't have the support people, this is like a double whammy. This is like a massive win for Israel. This is like gives Iranian people the chance to usurp their own government, to do a coup, right? So you can view it that way, like risk versus reward. I think the risk of doing this is substantially less than the reward that Israel might get from it. Basically, I really need to add chat to the fucking stream. Yeah. I'll put it here actually. Let's do like this. Amateur hour. True, I'm just talking about your view though. Like, do you think the Israeli strikes are justified because they weakened the regime? If that didn't happen, would you condemn the strikes or stay by them? I would not condemn the strikes because, again, it's like, I don't like viewing things after the fact, right? What is the reason that they're doing it? Is the risk reward essentially, like, is the mathing properly? Like, is this in the benefit of Israel to do this strike? Overall, I would say yes. Therefore, even if it fails, like hindsight is not a great way to view things, right? It's like you have to think about like how it happens in that moment, right? It's like the same argument about like the nuclear shit, right? Like nukes on Japan, right? Yeah, in hindsight it was evil, but like let's talk more about like what happened in that moment, right? So in my view, overall, even if this backfires, this was the appropriate move by Israel. Overall, even if it backfires, the war with Iran would go on if it's not handled, right? It's like you're gonna get a weak prime minister in Israel. You're gonna have a strong, I don't know the title, a strong president in Iran, right? Hamas would stay active, Hezbollah stays active, Houthis stay active, they get more funding, right? Let's say that like, the war ends and like none of the terrorist organizations get destroyed, whatever. The funding will start going towards Gaza. A lot of the funding will go to Hamas. Hamas will rebuild. There's a ceasefire, so there's no aggression. Usually Israel doesn't break the ceasefire. In 10, 20 years, when Hamas rebuilds, there's another attack, and it's all funded again from Iran, right? So like, again, in the long term, I don't see how not attacking Iran works in the benefit of Israel. Like, I don't see a scenario where like not trying to like get rid of the Iran problem as soon as possible is not working. And people say that Israel did the strike so Iran doesn't get nukes. Why do you think that Israel is actually doing it to help overthrow the regime? I think both. I think number one priority is overthrow the regime. Israel doesn't bomb Iran. In a few years' time, Iran has nukes and are now a much more serious threat. Someone has to stop that, and if anyone's gonna do it, it's probably the country that Iran poses the biggest threat to. Yeah, I pretty much agree. And honestly, even if, because here's the thing, even in a few years, if Iran doesn't have, and I made this argument earlier in the stream, but there was no one here to hear it. Even if Iran doesn't build nukes right now, right? They create the nuclear facilities, they create the nuclear energy, whatever, and now nuclear energy is the main source of energy for all people in Iran. Okay, so now you have a real deterrent, not in terms of weaponry, but in terms of humanitarianism. You have a real deterrent from Israel or the US doing anything if Iran wants to start developing nukes, right? Because at that point, when the whole country and its civilians are dependent on nuclear energy, you can't just go ahead and destroy their nuclear energy, okay, without like ramifications. It's like diplomatically and politically, it looks wrong, right? It's like, oh, you're attacking them, you're destroying all of the civilians' energy sources. How many people are gonna die because they rely on energy? All the hospitals that run on this energy, right? All of the people who are like in ER are gonna fucking die. Not ER, not like just curious. Are you Israeli? I was. I grew up in Israel. I live in Canada. So am I biased? Yeah, I'm trying not to be, but I am. You know, I'll take both arguments. Are you Jewish? Yes. Do I wear anything? No. I have hair. I use my hair. Do I pray? No. Do I keep a Sabbath? Do I eat kosher? No. I'm an atheistic Jew. Like, I am Jewish enough for the Nazis to kill me. I'm not Jewish enough for like anyone who is Jewish to actually care. I never consider myself Israeli. Yeah, I'm an atheist. I never consider myself Israeli or Canadian. I just like, I am where I am at this point in time. Like, I don't have a patriot soul. Let's just, if that's what you mean by Israeli. If I go to Israel, I'm an Israeli. If I live in Canada, I'm Canadian. If I live in the US, I'll be American. Right? Like, that's, I'm not patriotic in that sense, right? Like, I'm not gonna like die for this country, you know. I think Israel be allowed to keep its nukes. I don't think you can take it away. Like, how, like, I don't think anyone should have nukes. You know, I don't think anyone should be allowed. The problem with the word allowed is who's gonna take it. It is in US's best interest that Israel has nukes. And obviously Israel's best interest for Israel to have nukes. So, you know, it's not, I don't think it's a matter of allow. It's like, who's gonna do anything about it? If anyone could have nukes, everyone would have nukes. If like everyone could get them, everyone would have them. Yeah, I know you can't. I mean, like, if you could take it away, would you? Then I would have to take away Russia's and the US. I think it's like, it has to be even across the board. And China. Anyone who has nuclear power, I would. I wouldn't take away a nuke from one country. It would take away, but you have to take every. Yeah, busy. That's exactly it. Like taking it away from one country is just like, I don't think it's going to be fair. Even if the nukes from Israel wouldn't interact with US, right? Because it's like, also, by the way, the nukes in Israel, like I said, they're working in the US's benefit too, because Israel is a lot closer to Russia than the US is. So, yeah. So it's either get rid of all nukes or not. And if I was American, I would never trust Russia or China to say they also got rid of theirs. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Like, it has to be even across the board. Look, if it was up to me, go back to sticks and stones, you know? I like the argument that Iran shouldn't have nukes, but I'm skeptical of regime change because when Iraq invaded Iran, the unstable Ayatollah regimes were strengthened by a sense of nationalism against the invader. This is true. However, I think the reason that Iranians were against the Iraq is because it's like Shia Sunni type thing, right? Whereas like what seems to be that a lot of Iranians have more Western ideologies, or like think more like they want the Western freedom, right? It's more like, do I hate my enemy more than I hate the regime? And the enemy in this case is Iraq. Is the enemy of the people of Iran the US? If they consider it as yes, then they would probably stick with the regime, right? Because again, I think majority of people just do a math. It's like, would I rather be under US friendly control with more US like Western values, or would I rather be, you know, a Shia living in a Sunni country, right? Like, I think it's, you know, people did the math and it's like, I'll take the Shia. You know, it's like, I think that's pretty much what happened, right? It's like, you're offering me the same, but worse, actually, because I'm not going to be of the same religion background. So I don't think they're equatable, basically.
Program, and I hope that's the thing that we pursue. By the way, I think I don't think it's split MAGA down the middle at all. That's what it appears like on X. I really don't think when you talk to ordinary people that's the situation in America, especially in the Republican Party, which is overwhelmingly pro-Israel and has been for a very long time.
Okay, Dave Smith.
There's no question. I mean, I largely agree with Konstantin there. I think if Trump can thread the needle here and not lead to a catastrophe, that he can survive this politically. I do think he's downplaying the split a little bit. Again, it's not just about like polls about how people feel about boots on the ground, which obviously the American people are largely opposed to. And yes, it is true that most of the Republicans do support Israel, although poll after poll has demonstrated that this is really changing with the younger generation. But look.
Fair point. Why is the poll after poll is changing for the younger demographic? Why would the younger demographic be against supporting Israel right now? Because they know that if the US starts supporting Israel too much, the boots on the ground are going to be them. Okay, because they are the younger generation, right? It's like, so yeah, obviously they won't really be in favor of it. Like, come on. Right? I mean, that, and also, let's be real, college-educated kids kind of tend to swing left. Then they grow up and they become Republican, right? So
look, I mean, you have a situation right now, and yesterday, like I started the day by denouncing Donald Trump, and I was, taking a lot, trending on Twitter and getting a lot of praise and a lot of insults and all that stuff. But by the end of the day, it was like Tucker Carlson was being insulted by Donald Trump for not even criticizing him, really just criticizing the policy while heaping praise on Donald Trump. But Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, I mean, some of the most influential conservative voices in the United States of America have all come out and really drawn a red line that we do not want to have another war here. So the point is that if it does get to that, and that's a big if. But if it does come to that point, like a real boots on the ground war, Donald Trump will absolutely destroy his coalition and his legacy along with it, as well as his entire domestic agenda. I mean,
I feel like people put too much emphasis on legacy. I don't look. Honestly, I don't think Trump cares too much about legacy. I think all he wanted was to bring the U.S. back to its glory days. He thought he was the man to do it, and and he'll do what he thinks is right. He did what he thinks is right against pretty much everyone by running for president. Everyone he knew told him not to run. He ran, right? Like, I don't think he really cares. Like, he wants to do what's best for America and for its people, even if the people disagree. And obviously, his point of view might not be correct. Like, he's still a person.
You need as much political capital as you can get when there's people out on the streets protesting against his immigration policies.
He doesn't need as much political power. He can't run for third term. This is the term where he can say, fuck it, I'm gonna do it my way. Like, this is the term. That is legacy. Look, legacy, the way I see it is... So the way you see it's like... In his mind, legacy is the US is better from me. The way I see legacy is what people think of my actions when I'm gone, right? Like, let's say Trump is gone, dead or alive, doesn't matter. He's not president, and people are saying that it's like he ruined the country, yada yada. That is his legacy, right? So like, the legacy in his mind and the legacy in people's minds don't have to match, right? And again, like I said, I don't think he cares about what other people think his legacy is, right? He might, yeah. But like, I'm just saying, I don't think he cares what other people are thinking about his legacy, right? That's the point.
And he's risking squandering all of this for something that's absolutely no threat to the United States of America at all, on the side of the country who secretly developed nukes and is not in the non-proliferation treaty, against the country who doesn't have nukes and is in the non-proliferation treaty.
By the way, I love that we're talking about, like, and again, I'm also pretty sure that Israel has nukes, but I'll never say it with such confidence. It's like, oh, they secretly developed nukes. Do they have nukes? Like, how? Like, why did they ask the lawyer that was here like a few shows ago or like last show? Why did they ask us, like, does Israel have nukes? Does Israel have nukes? Well, I thought it was a done deal. Israel has nukes. You guys keep saying that Israel has nukes. Do we know that Israel have nukes? I am pretty sure it does. A lot of people are pretty sure it does. But to say it with such fucking confidence, right? And he might be right. Like, he's very likely to be right. But I still wouldn't say stuff that I'm, like, not 100% sure about. That, like, they have nukes. 100% done deal. They have nukes. I don't know. Like, it's just such a weird fucking thing to say. Also, when did Israel ever threaten to use them? Why do you think it's a bad thing that Israel has nukes? Overall, like, why do you think it's bad that Israel have nukes?
The most reckless madness a policy could possibly be.
Constantine.
Well, he's not pursuing that policy. This is what the point I keep making to Dave. What you keep doing, Dave, is taking to the extremist position. No one's talking about boots on the ground except the usual Lindsey Grahams, who no one in the Trump cabinet takes seriously on these issues at all.
I don't know about that.
They don't. The conversation that's happening is about what is the right level of America's involvement. We will see what that is. And by the way, look, I haven't seen Charlie Kirk, who is genuinely influential, I think, within the MAGA movement, criticize President Trump. I think he's been kind of balanced in his commentary. All the other people, the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlson.
Consider. I guess you can use that word, yeah. I thought they did. Quick Google search. Yo, Grok, my buddy, my friend, my homie. Is it proven that Israel have nukes? It is not officially confirmed or denied possessing nuclear weapons, maintaining a policy of strategic ambiguity. However, substantial evidence suggests they have a nuclear arsenal. Here's a concise overview based on available information. 200 warheads. 200 nuclear warheads. Damn, they have a lot, huh? While not proven in the sense of official confirmation or a public test, the consensus among experts backed by historical leaks and intelligence strongly suggests Israel possesses nuclear weapons. Okay. It's bad if you don't like Israel, but if they have them and their army gets overrun by a foreign enemy, then they have the last attack. Again, yeah, I think in Israel's case, a nuke would be a massive deterrent. The conclusion is enough to say it is, but like they keep saying like why so and again this is my point with like where he says that's like he's talking to the lawyer and he's like, well, do you know, does Israel have nukes? And it's like, why are you asking if it is a done deal, you know, kind of thing, which is like why even try to debate somebody with like, oh, does Israel have nukes, which is like where you clearly believe that Israel have nukes, right? It's like it's just a weird thing to like talk about. And again, why does Dave have a problem? Like, why does anyone in the US, okay, have a problem with Israel having nukes while they're your allies? No official confirmation. I don't really know, but maybe it was strategy to not confirm it. Yeah, obviously, like, you know, like keeping the ambiguity is fine. Also, like, again, there's the whole like legality. If they say that they have it, Dave doesn't think Israel is an ally, though. Well, I don't care what Dave thinks. It's like, if Israel's not an ally, his point stands. But because they're technically an ally, your point is weird, right? And he's just a weird guy. They are the enemy to Dave, dude. Like, yes, it's funny enough how much he wants to defend Iran, enemy of the US, versus how much he hates Israel, ally of the US. It is actually like fucking insane to me.
Etc. The vast majority of people within the conservative movement in America are not taking their opinion on this issue, and the polls bear that out.
Tucker, though,
well, I would say
Tucker, I think, is a significant voice.
People have huge audiences.
Well, I'm not saying they don't have huge audiences, but I'm saying a lot of those audiences are not within the conservative movement.
Right, but when Tucker chewed up Ted Cruz, for example, and did it pretty skillfully, I have to say, made Cruz look pretty ill-informed about Iran. That's got a massive amount of mainstream media attention today. You know, I think that you can't ignore. I mean, it's interesting to me. Look at the split. You know, the MAGA names against Trump: Candace Owens, you, Dave, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex Jones.
Candace Owens is not MAGA, by the way. Candace Owens was early MAGA, and then she started shitting on Trump like before he was inaugurated. Like, Candace Owens is not MAGA, not in a very long time. Okay, there's a difference between like, I'm going to vote for Trump because it's better than Kamala, and being MAGA. Also, anything right now, so like people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, it's like they hate Israel so much. Like, hey man, space is Jew, fake, and gay, okay? Dinosaurs are fake. They're Jewish inventions, okay? All of this is Candace Owens, okay? Anything you, like, if Israel and the US are allies, whoever is in government is the enemy of Candace Owens, okay?
Like, Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson, obviously. Then you got the ones for Charlie Kirk's been pretty balanced, like you said, Lindsey Graham, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Mark Levine. I mean, I've not seen that kind of split on many issues, and this is potentially the biggest issue of all.
Can I just
I think every war, if you discuss war, you're gonna have a massive split within your base. Like, it's normal, because it's like it's a different issue. Like, you have political issues, then you have war issues, right? We couldn't agree on everything politically, but then you don't agree on like, should we have boots on the ground or not, and that could be a split. Like, I mean, it's normal. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like that's normal.
To what Konstantin just said, because I thought I made this point pretty clear at the beginning, but let me try to make it clear. You can sit here and say nobody's talking about boots on the ground all you want to. This whole thing is about a regime change, and all of the major players have admitted this in their own words. Even Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't saying that Iran was on the cusp of having nuclear weapons.
That could be regime change. But that could be regime change, as we saw in Syria towards the end of last year in December, when after a long and bloody and awful civil war, suddenly the downfall of Assad happened.
Which, by the way, that is the only way you make a regime change. Regime change has to happen from the inside. Otherwise, you're just going to get more of the same. You want a regime change, you gotta encourage the people who already want a regime change to take action. Forcing the regime change, not gonna happen, okay? You cannot force a regime change against the will of the people. You're just gonna get more of the same people in power.
Incredibly quickly, and it didn't involve boots on the ground in any conventional sense. It involved actual Syrian boots from civilians.
That's right.
And they were able to.
That's
What you need for a regime change is propaganda. That's literally all you need. Propaganda. Make the civilians believe that they hate the regime, and make sure that their lives are bad enough that they would want to make a change, that they don't have much to lose. Okay? That is literally like the two things you need for a regime change, right? Not have a good time, like just fucking be like economically unstable or all that stuff, uncertainty, yada yada, and also propaganda to hate your or like real reasons to hate your leaders. Like pretty much it. You don't need much else.
I see. I don't think it can be ruled.
But you could say you need propaganda to keep that regime going. Same thing, exactly. Exactly the same thing that you need to change the regime is exactly the same thing you need to do in order to keep the regime. If your people have something to lose, right? I think we have seen real reasons where the people were not favorable to the regime. Yeah, we have, right? But it's like if the people have something to lose, even if it's bad, but they're accustomed to it and like they have something to lose, and they believe that the regime is not as evil as what they're experiencing in like propaganda. They will not what do you call it? Orchestrate a coup. The Qatar World Cup and the little girl that got shot in the head. Ooh, I don't even know about that. I feel it sounds familiar, but I don't even know about that. Like I don't know the details. Sounds familiar. I just all remember about the Qatar World Cup was something about gays. That's pretty much all I remember. There's too many issues in the world. I don't have time to keep track of every one of them.
Ruled out that if enough Iranian people feel that their regime has been humiliated, has actually been exposed for not being able to hit back in the way they've always vowed to, feel that they're weak and disgraced and so on, why couldn't there be an uprising like we saw in Syria at the end of last year? I don't think it can be ruled out.
Well, I mean, listen. So, Piers, just to be clear, because you are right about that, there are the models like Libya and Syria where it didn't require long occupations and nation building, and all you got was a failed state with open-air slave markets, a massive refugee crisis into Europe, and now you have Al-Qaeda in charge of Syria. And excuse me, as an American, my beef is with Al-Qaeda, not
but
with Hezbollah.
He is not behaving like an...
Actually, as an American, your beef... Again... Okay, explain to me how Dave Smith believes that 9/11 was an inside job, but also have a beef with Al-Qaeda. Right? We were lied to about going to war in Iraq. We were lied to about the reasons, but also Al-Qaeda is my enemy. Al-Qaeda hasn't been fucking active anywhere in the US for like 20 years. Al-Qaeda is as much your enemy as Iran. It has nothing to do with you at this point.
A member of Al-Qaeda. Now he's a leader of the country. He appears to be...
Oh, so that's okay.
I'm not taking anything...
all right.
Listen, I don't take any... As Donald Trump once says, I don't trust anyone, right? So let's see
I'm
how
not saying trust.
Let's see how
I'm
it
not saying
plays
trust
out.
here. Hold on. Piers, I'm not saying trust. This man was fighting against America in the Iraq
I know
war,
his
part of
history.
the insurgents,
I know.
killing our boys.
I know, but
so
look,
why am I supposed to care about
no,
the
but then
people who
Nelson
kill
Mandela...
Israelis? but I'm supposed to-
By the way. If your boys are the invading army to a country, you can support your boys all you want. But holding the enemy as at fault for fighting back is fucking retarded. Oh, they were killing our boys. Where were they killing them? In the US or in their fucking country? In their country? Okay, they're the defending force. Even though it sucks that your boys died, sure, that doesn't mean that these guys are like actively your fucking enemy. They're not invading you, they're not doing anything. You came to their land and they defended it. Okay? Like they're not the bad guy in this scenario, realistically, right? Like just it's like, oh, they were killing our boys. Like, why are you there?
make up with.
Listen, Nelson Mandela was on the UK.
I love that like everyone is at fault except the US all the time. My bad, I was thinking Malala Yousafzai, but she was Pakistani, I think. But the thing against girls in Iran was the forced wearing of the headscarf thing, hijab, I think. I think that's real enough to fight against, and I just hope that it's not propaganda as a necessary thing to revolt, because it would be really hard in a state like Iran to have anti-government propaganda. It is. We saw this in the 2009-2011 protests they had. The whole kafia thing, honestly, I think it is extremely minor. Because here's the thing, right? Like the whole analogy of like a frog in a boiling water, right? Like if the frog is in cold water and then you heat up the water, the frog doesn't jump. Which, by the way, from my understanding, it's false. The frog will jump out when it gets too hot. But the whole point of that analogy overall is that if you take away things slowly, right? Like you're not changing something on the extreme level, people will get accustomed to it. So for example, you went from like being able to wear fucking bikinis on the street to just wearing the hijab. I don't think it's that big of a deal for people. Like people are like, no, I don't like it, whatever. And then you give them like religious reasons and like, you know, like give them good reasons about like, you know, male rapists, whatever, and like scare them into it. And like, okay, you know what? Fine. All right, they adjust to that. Now you add, like, now you take something else. Now you take something else. Now you take something else. Now you take something else, right? And they get accustomed to it. That's where, like, how you get there. Not a big deal to some, but there was real protests against. Yeah, of course, there would be protests, right? Now, but imagine how many protests you would have if you got a lot of multiple changes in one go. You would have a lot more people protesting. Right? For some, it wasn't a big deal. It's like, whatever, I'll wear a hijab. It's not a big deal. First of all, a lot of the men were like, yeah, fuck it, whatever. So it's just women protesting realistically, right? And their husbands, maybe, right? And even some of the husbands would not protest. Like, yeah, I want to control my woman a bit more, you know? Like, I don't want my woman to be seen in public. I want to protect her, right? So it's like, you can use logic to be like, why the hijab is good. Right? So you have very little amount of people in comparison who protest, right? And then, you know, you take something else and it's like, well, you lost this battle and then like whatever, you demoralize them. There's good luck winning any battles, right? No, first they came for us, then they came for them, then they came for this, and at this point you had nobody left to fight, right? How the saying goes. I actually looked up this thing the other day, funny enough. Grok, what's the poem I'm thinking about? First They Came. Yeah, First They Came by Martin Niemöller, a German pastor, yada. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, but I did not speak out because I wasn't. Then they came for the Jew, I did not speak out. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So you tackle a problem one at a time, right? Then you have less resistance, and at that point there's no one to resist, right? Less and less resistance.
But so that's it. So we're demanding an unconditional surrender. Well, one thing I'd say that demanding an unconditional surrender from Japan and now demanding.
Sorry, this is the wrong one.
Terrorist
I talk about that.
And went on to become one of the greatest people in history and led his country to a more unified place. In other words, Trump is taking a bet that this new leader in Syria actually is a reformed character. And certainly, so far, you would have to say that the signs are reasonably encouraging, given the apocalyptic feelings that some people had, that he would simply be Mr. Al-Qaeda presiding over complete mayhem.
And one thing is worth adding, by the way, on this, is that Iran has a history. Iran, just a quick point, Dave, very quick. Iran has a history of 25 years or maybe 26 years of living in a secular and relatively liberal free society. So the people of Persia have a very different history to the countries you're talking about. This is not to say that regime change or the change of a regime does not lead to.
By the way, those people who tasted the freedom, whatever, most of them are probably not even alive, or they don't have a voice at this point. Good luck. This is these people would have had to be already in their mid-20s or later, and add 45 years since, so it's they're in late 60s and older. Yeah, nobody's really listening to them. And probably, I don't know, what's the expectancy in Iran for people, right? So it's like 72, 80, whatever. Like a lot of them are already gone. So I don't think that's a very strong argument. Maybe like them knowing that it happened. Iranians before the Ayatollah came in. Yeah. Because that ended in 1979. That's when the Ayatollah took over, right? So that's like, what, 46 years ago? The only people who would actually actively like really remember it are people who were like probably around their 20s. Those people would tell their kids what Iran was like. They can, but the kids would not experience it. That's the problem. Like where you like you can tell the stories of what it was like, but if you don't experience it, it's not the same. Right now, here's the thing. You have internet. Kids can see what life is like in the US, in Russia, in China, yada yada yada. They can see it. They can envision a better future, a better life. But it's not the same as like you lived it, so like you're more motivated to like take action, kind of thing, right? Like, yeah, that's freedom pill. Yeah, they get the freedom pill, but it's not. They're not getting like the fucking freedom injection. You know.
To catastrophe. I mean,
And there's no obvious. I mean, someone wrote a very good piece about this week. There is no obvious savior waiting in the wings other than the Shah's son, who is a quite divisive character. I've interviewed him, I like him personally, but divisive character. But there's no like Mandela figure that you could point to and say is waiting in the wings to potentially come and rescue Iran. That person so far hasn't been identified.
Can I just make a couple quick points on this? Okay, so like number one, we launched 25 years of
they don't have their Jean d'Arc, they don't have their Mandela, they don't have their Gandhi. Yeah, they don't have a figure to like people in order to do a revolution. Usually, you need a person to stand behind, right? You can't just be like, not everyone can be a leader. A lot of people would want to follow the leader who would lead them into the revolution. It's a lot easier, less responsibility. You know, easier to like kind of like back out of it if it's not working out. Like you're not the head, like you're not the target of assassination. You're part of the crowd, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think Iran has that, and that is a problem. In order to like create a revolution, right? I think Israel and maybe the US need to do like some serious propaganda to prop somebody up to be that person. But yeah, we'll see.
Are dubbed forever wars on the justification that Al-Qaeda came over here and murdered innocent American citizens. And now I'm supposed to make up with Al-Qaeda and forgive them for that because he put on a three-piece suit while I focus on Israel's enemies. I just find this to be like a crazy ask of the American people. And
I love how like he's using this argument about Al-Qaeda. Right, so let's hear this part.
25 years of what they are dubbed forever wars on the justification that Al-Qaeda came over here and murdered innocent American citizens. And
the justification that Al-Qaeda, the group, by the way, like the words matter, okay? But then that figure gets put in prison. Yeah, that figure would be the one taking the blame. So it's like it's really hard to become that figure for any regular person, right? But people will need that in order to like move the coup.
And now I'm supposed to make up with Al-Qaeda and forgive them for that because he put on a three-piece suit while I focus on Israel's enemies. I just find this.
I love that his argument here is Al-Qaeda, or basically two people from Al-Qaeda, or whatever, did 9/11, let's say, right? Now he's blaming all of Al-Qaeda for this. People who had probably like nothing to do with it, whatever, regulars, like pretty much citizens who are in control, right? Maybe he's not talking about citizens, right? But let's say he's just talking about Al-Qaeda. But then he has a problem when Israel is going after Hamas. Interesting.
To be like a crazy ask of the American people. And then, you know, look, it's real easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, they had a strong tradition of liberalism and everything's going to work out this time for the first time. We're going to have a regime change that's going
to... Okay, well, it's better to say that it's not going to work out and not do anything. Like, what?
Work out really smoothly. Iran is so weak. The people hate them so much. This regime has been in power since 1979, spending the vast majority of that time having the most powerful governments in the history of the world, hell-bent on ousting this regime. And they've survived this long. Maybe you guys are right this time. But you know, Piers, come on, man. I mean, you remember.
50 years is a very short amount of time. And by saying the most powerful armies trying to oust this regime, who actively tried to oust the Iranian regime like outside of Iran? Who, like realistically, who actually put in effort to try and oust this government, this regime? Like it never happened. This is like a made up fucking thing in his brain. It's like, oh, we always try to like, you know, like oust this regime. Like this never happened. What are you talking about? Like actual effort, not deals, actual effort. He's a rat. It's not how he describes it. Yeah. Yeah, no, he's a...
Remember the mission accomplished banners? You remember when they had the first elections in Iraq and it even fooled Jon Stewart and he was celebrating, oh, I guess George W. Bush was right. And then we went on to the most brutal and bloody 8 years of civil war that saw 1 million innocent people die. The country absolutely destroyed, massive displacements and horror stories. And
what did the US do in that time? Did it take any action? No? Okay, then shut the fuck up. US didn't do shit. Nobody tried to do shit, okay? Nobody tried, right? Half-assed attempts is kind of like testing the water. Can we do it? Like, can we do it? No one attacked them. No one assassinated 10 of their leaders in one fucking strike. Nobody made the Ayatollah fucking hide. I think it's the Ayatollah, right? Hide in the fucking bunker and send mean tweets. Right? This never happened, okay? This is like a non-precedented thing. Is it gonna work? Is it not gonna work? Fuck knows, okay? Nobody fucking knows, okay? It is a risk that should be taken, though.
So, you know, it's like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and maybe it'll make you a little bit uncomfortable, but the amount of people celebrating this thing 4 or 5 days into it, like, oh my God, Israel took out all their targets. Look how easy it was. We've been here before. I've seen this movie.
I'll be honest with you, Dave, as someone who's not pushing regime change or American involvement, as I've said, in the way that you think people are trying to do, I am celebrating the fact that Iran is no longer enriching uranium to 60%. I think that is worth celebrating. I think that's a good thing. I think we should all be relieved that that's happening.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I also agree with Dave Smith when he says this could go horrible.
I think we should be concerned about what?
It's happening.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I also agree with Dave Smith when he says this could go horribly wrong.
But that's what we're all saying. I'm saying that too.
Yeah, I agree.
This is war. Like, no one knows how it's going to turn out exactly.
I agree. I mean, I've
That's why you don't fight wars of choice.
Well, I've gone as far as saying I think that unlike
Oh so stupid. This guy's so fucking dumb. Oh my God, bro. That's why you don't fight wars of choice.
the Iraq War in 2003, I feel like this seems a justified action by Israel to protect its people from what is clear fast-moving acceleration of uranium by a lethal enemy that is wedded to terror groups all over its border who want to kill it. I understand that. It seems justified. Now, does that mean I think it's going to work and isn't going to cause huge problems? No. And I think the jury is very firmly out.
There's going to be problems. Like, it's still a worthy risk to take. Like, nobody's saying that this is going to be clean fucking, you know, done deal. We killed these 10 guys. Next is the Ayatollah, and like done. The regime changed. Like, obviously, it's never that fucking easy.
On that, and it's going to be an extremely fascinating and turbulent few weeks and months ahead. And I think right now Donald Trump, probably the loneliest man in the world, sitting in the White House working out what does he actually do now. And if he does press the button on attacking Iran, it will go really against pretty much everything he said, other than specifically Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. But in terms of starting a war in the Middle East, that is really antithetical against everything he's said he stands for. So it's a really interesting, momentous decision for Donald Trump to be taking, and the consequences could be enormous. But gentlemen, I've really enjoyed this debate. Thank you both for.
I must say, though, this was a much better fucking debate on Piers Morgan, especially compared to the previous one with the lawyer. Like, dude, that one was a fucking sham, okay? Like, that wasn't even a debate. That was like a woman trying to speak and two men trying to silence her, okay? Well, not two men. I'll give Dave some credit. He didn't do anything in that debate, realistically. I think he had 2 points in, like, 1 hour that were, like, kind of like whatever Piers was already saying anyways. And Piers was debating with himself because he just didn't let her talk anyways. Anyways, that's it for this one.